I wanted to take up something that David said about the sort of post-Second World War settlement, because I think it's very important to understanding how failed states often work. I mean, I was looking through this list actually. I downloaded the Fun for Peace's Failed States Index, which is a really fun read if anyone ever wants to do it. And actually, the thing that, as I went through it, I mean, I realised that there's just about a third of the countries in the top 30. And one of the things that I realised is, to misquote Tolstoy, is that, yes, failed states, failed states are different in failing for their own reasons. I mean, we talk about failed states, but I could bunch together some of those places on this failed states index, and there would be other ones, into recognisable groups. But for me, and visiting some of these places and having worked in Iraq and done some work in Afghanistan and a number of other places on this, the thing that I often find about failed states is that there are places like Bosnia where, with the best will in the world, there are conflicts that remain frozen. A lot of the conflicts that were there in the first place have not been resolved, and that's not through any amount of effort. And when we look at failed states, we think about them in terms of excuse me, that's my phone. It's a bit embarrassing to sort of interrupt yourself when you're in mobile. It's a failed state. It's a failed state, yeah. I'm just going to turn it off if I can work out how to. That often what we think about when we look at failed states, and the reason that some failed states get more attention than others, is because we think about them in terms of our own narratives. If the press failing or weak states, it's because when it looks at them, it thinks too much about, well, what does this mean to us? So when we think about Sudan, it's not about the complexity of Sudan. It's not about the complexities that need addressing in Sudan. It's about the issue of, Islamists in the north, plucky animists in the south, and therefore that's how we should think about it. When we think about Afghanistan, we think about it through the trope of, here was a problem place, there are British soldiers here. Most often when you read about reporting about Afghanistan, the reason it fails is because it concentrates on what our concerns are in Afghanistan. It's not about, as you described absolutely rightly, concerns like, why is it that all the people who've got a university education in a place that's got such a high level of illiteracy are actually working on much higher salaries for the international agencies rather than working for an extremely poorly resourced civil service that cannot attract people into the civil service. And I think that's where we fail it. We think about places about what they mean to us, or we think about places not at all. I mean, an example that I scribbled down in my list of countries by failed states index was, when a hurricane recently threatened New Orleans, all of us as newspaper organisations sent people down to New Orleans thinking it was going to be a repetition of Hurricane Katrina. Nothing happened. I mean, nothing really happened at all. However, in Haiti, which is number 14 on the list, which is down 3 places apparently, there were huge problems, and yet there was no reporting from there at all. Equally, if you look at...
it was in the end of the BBC.
There was in the end, but I mean, it was very slow. It was very slow. And I mean, I think, for me, that's where journalists failing states, is that we don't get out of our own concerns. We don't think about what the local problems are, what the local issues are, and what needs to be done. I mean, in terms of making local settlements, and actually being interested in what those local conflicts and of interest are, whether it's between the Pashtun and the south, and between the centre and the outside in Afghanistan, between sort of the corrupted kind of political settlement in Iraq. I mean, we don't look at that. We always look at things in terms of how will this benefit us, and and if there is a failure, and I agree absolutely with Paddy's point, because I think I actually lectured in Sarajevo on self-regulating press a couple of years ago. The local media, it's fantastic, and it's absolutely essential, and it's probably more important than the international media. But at the end of the day, I mean, if we want to do places like Congo and Haiti more justice, then we should be reporting it more, which we don't, and we should be reporting it outside of the terms that we feel comfortable as journalists, i.e. in terms of actually what it means to the people who live there. And I think that's probably the most important thing.
Thank you very much.